They came, they challenged, they conquered. Some lived to tell the tale while others sacrificed their lives. They gambled on the dream of fortune and fame. They are the heroes of the falls. Situated between the largest body of fresh water in the world and bordering two countries, Niagara Falls has been for centuries a tourist destination, and being one of the 7 natural wonders of the world, it also has attracted the imagination of a new breed of stunting showmen, the daredevil. Throughout the 19th century, these daring showmen dazzled and amazed onlookers with their high-risk escapades. These stunts included high divers, tightrope walkers, swimmers, and riding in airtight barrels through the treacherous rapids. The dangerous exploits were always highly advertised, promoters seeking financial gain as thousands would show up to witness the spectacles. Niagara Falls was the perfect setting for these stunts with its majestic view and thundering cascades. As time went on, these showmen tried to outdo each other with more daring and dangerous performances. But soon the public's eye was more and more focused on the ultimate challenge of going over the brink of the falls itself. In 1901, the world's attention was centered on the Pan Am Exposition taking place in Buffalo, New York. Thousands upon thousands journeyed to Western New York to be part of the expo and witness the awesome power of electricity generated from the hydro plant 20 miles away in Niagara Falls to the swirling bright lights of the festival grounds. This was the perfect opportunity for someone with enough imagination and sheer guts to capitalize on the event and take the plunge over the falls and garnish a major boost in publicity to acquire wealth and fame. 1 week before the scheduled end of the exposition, the opportunity was initiated by the most unlikely candidate, a 63-year-old woman. October 24th, 1901. 63-year-old Annie Edson Taylor from Bay City, Michigan made history by becoming the first person to conquer the falls with her wooden barrel stunt. Married at age 17, she gave birth to a son that died 3 days later. Not long after, she also lost her husband. She became a teacher and worked throughout the country until settling in Bay City, Michigan. One day while reading a newspaper about the 1901 Pan Am Exposition, she claims to have had a flash about going over Niagara Falls and becoming rich and famous. Hoping to capitalize on the exhibition's worldwide publicity, she started to make plans for the stunt. She contracted with a company to build a barrel suitable for the stunt, then left Bay City for Niagara Falls. Originally, she announced her trip for Sunday, October 20th, and several thousand spectators arrived to witness the event, but she never appeared. The stunt was rescheduled for the following Wednesday, but she again failed to show. However, the next day on her 63rd birthday, October 24th, she headed out from Grass Island above the falls around 3:30 p.m. in a small boat with her barrel being towed behind her. About 600 feet out into the river, she changed into different clothes, then climbed into the barrel and was packed with pillows and a small mattress. The lid was closed and a perilous journey began. Eventually, she reached the brink and went over. 75 minutes had passed since the lid of the barrel was closed. Just before her journey, her manager had filled the barrel with air with a bicycle pump, claiming she had enough air to last a week. As the barrel reached the Canadian shore, a series of planks and poles were constructed to reach the barrel, and rescuers had to saw off the lid as it was jammed. But she emerged alive, suffering only minor cuts and bruises. Hoping for financial gain, she went on tour with her manager, but it turned out to be a disaster. A second tour, this time with a replica barrel, the original was never retrieved from the stunt, proved to be just as unsuccessful. She continued on posing for photographs with her barrel, but she died penniless at the Niagara County Infirmary in Lockport, New York in 1921. Her tombstone reads, Annie Edson Taylor, first to go over Niagara Falls in a barrel. On July 25, 1911, Bobby Leach became the first man and second person in history to conquer the falls. Unlike Annie Taylor before him, Bobby Leach was a real stuntman. Before his triumphant trip over the Horseshoe Falls, he had rode the Whirlpool Rapids in a barrel and also parachuted from the suspension bridge into the gorge below. Already well known in England as a circus stuntman, Leach saw Niagara Falls as the ultimate challenge for a daredevil, invariably the best place to acquire fame and fortune in his career. So on July 25, 1911, Bobby Leach set forth on his stunt in an 8-foot-long steel drum and was launched from Navy Island close to the Canadian shore. The ride to the brink took 18 minutes. It was anything but smooth upon landing. It took 22 minutes to recover the drum. Lodged at the base of the falls, an Ontario Power employee couldn't take it any longer, so he tied a rope around his waist and swam out and tied the other end to Leach's drum so it could be pulled to shore. He emerged alive but suffered 2 broken kneecaps and a broken jaw. He remained hospitalized for 23 weeks, where afterwards he went on tour with his drum and filmed footage of the stunt. While in New Zealand, he had slipped on an orange peel during one of his daily walks and broken his leg, which became infected, and later had to be amputated. He died from his wounds 2 months later at the hospital at age 70 years old. July 11, 1920. Charles Stevens became the third person to challenge the falls and the first person to die trying. The father of 11 children, he was known in England as the Demon Barber of Bristol. Like Bobby Leach before him, he was a well-known stuntman who acquired his fame from a number of high dives and several parachute jumps. So at the age of 58, the barber from Bristol, England, decided to take on the greatest daredevil challenge of all and ride a barrel over the brink of the Horseshoe Falls. So in the morning, about 8:10 a.m., Charles Stevens launched his barrel made of Russian oak with little fanfare as to avoid detection from the police. Stevens was the most stubborn of the daredevils. Bobby Leach tried to stop Stevens as he wanted to tie his legs to a heavy anvil and strap his arms to the barrel. He reluctantly agreed to take a small tank of oxygen with him. He launched at Snyder's Point, about 3 miles upstream from the falls. 45 minutes later, he went over the brink and disappeared into the spray. Upon impact, the anvil that was tied to Stevens' feet broke through the bottom of the barrel, and he was propelled 180 feet deep into the bottom of the gorge. What was left of the barrel remained trapped at the base of the falls till the iron hoops gave way. When the barrel was retrieved, only the right arm and rib was found. The tattoo on the arm read, "Forget Me Not, Annie." July 4th, 1928, 36-year-old Jean Lussier became the fourth person to challenge the falls. Born in Concord, New Hampshire, his French-Canadian parents moved back after his birth to Canada. At age 16, he moved back to New Hampshire. Upon hearing of Charles Stevens' death, he became interested in challenging the falls himself. With his life savings of $1,500, he set out to Akron, Ohio Rubber Company to build on his design of a rubber ball 6 feet in diameter. He had enough air to last 40 hours in case he got trapped behind a wall of water. He towed his rubber ball out to the middle of the river and he set out on his journey about 2 miles upstream of Horseshoe Falls. Minutes later, he went over the brink. Lucier's rubber ball was retrieved by the Maid of the Mist. He came out with only slight cuts and bruises. To make money from the stunt, he sold pieces of his rubber balls. As he aged, he set out on plans to be the first person to go over the American Falls, but his dream died with his advanced age. He died in his mid-70s while living in Niagara Falls. July 5th, 1930, George Strouthakis, at the age of 46, became the 5th person to challenge Niagara Falls. A religious mystic born in Greece, he had a dream of becoming a writer and had written several unpublished books in mysticism. After moving to Buffalo, New York, he worked as a chef at a Greek restaurant. With the unsuccessful attempts of his counterparts at making any kind of fortune from their stunts, he thought he would become wealthy by publishing books about his successful stunt over the falls. He would often row his boat in the Niagara River, coming closer and closer to the falls each trip. He then decided to proceed on his plans and built a barrel massive in size compared to previous barrels. Then, on July 5, 1930, Strouthakis rowed his barrel with his pet turtle aboard over the brink of the Horseshoe Falls. The barrel made it with no damage, but he had only 8 hours of oxygen on board. The barrel became trapped behind the wall of water for 22 hours before being released by an eddy. When the lid was removed, rescuers found Strouthakis dead from the suffocation, but his turtle named Sunny survived. August 5th, 1951. William Redhill Jr. became the 6th person to challenge the falls. Born son of the famous Niagara Falls stunter and rescuer William Redhill Sr., William Jr. had a lot of weight to carry on his shoulders in keeping up with his father's legend. Twice he swam from the base of the American Falls but did not beat his father's time of 11 minutes. He also successfully rowed his barrel twice through the Whirlpool Rapids. Although the stunts helped continue the Redhill family legacy, wealth always eluded him. He had his estate included all 3 of his barrels seized to settle debts owed to creditors. Now, with no money and the burden to keep his father's legend alive, he decided at the age of 38 to challenge the Horseshoe Falls. Because of the lack of funds, he constructed a very cheap and crude craft consisting of inner tubes held together by netting and strands of webbing. So on August 5, 1951, with little fanfare to elude Parks police, William Redhill Jr. launched from Usher's Creek toward his dangerous journey over the falls. Thousands watched the spectacle. The badly damaged craft called the Thing started to emerge with parts of the 13 inner tubes damaged and separated. The silence was broken with Hill Jr.'s mother calling out his name, with his wife and 10-year-old daughter joined in. His three brothers started to frantically search for his body but could not find him. The next morning, his mutilated and badly battered body was found washed ashore near the Maid of the Mist dock on the Canadian shore. Since that day, there has been a very strong stance by the Niagara Parks Police to thwart any attempts at stunting at Niagara Falls. July 15, 1961. William Fitzgerald, also known as Nathan T. Boy, became the seventh person to challenge the falls. A maintenance man at IBM in New York City, Fitzgerald wanted there to be a black man listed on the Daredevil Wall of Fame. So the Bronx, New York resident built a steel and rubber sphere that he named Plungosphere and made his preparations on going over the falls in secret to avoid police detection. So at the age of 30 years old, Fitzgerald had a steel sphere towed from the American side out toward the Canadian Rapids for a stunt. He went over the Horseshoe Falls closer toward the American side. Upon landing, Fitzgerald had hit a rock at the bottom, causing a 2-foot dent on his steel sphere. He was promptly picked up by the Little Sister, Maid of the Mist boat, and rescued. He emerged virtually unscathed. Afterwards, upon completing his schooling, he became a fellow of faculty at a medical school in New York City. On July 2, 1984, Czechoslovakian-born Karol Susek became the 8th person to challenge the falls. Susek already successfully journeyed through the Whirlpool Rapids twice, and now he planned to go over the Horseshoe Falls in a homemade barrel. 23 years had passed since the last attempt was made. Susek had advertised himself as the last of the Niagara Daredevils. He had spent $15,000 on the barrel and another $30,000 on a film production of the event, which he quickly recouped afterwards. He became the only daredevil to achieve wealth as a result of his stunt over the falls. So on July 2, 1984, at the age of 37 years, 4 assistants pushed Karol Susek upstream from the Horseshoe Falls on the Canadian side, undetected by police in his red barrel. Upon hitting the bottom, the barrel bounced, causing Susek's wristwatch to strike his forehead, causing cuts. His barrel became stranded for 45 minutes, bouncing off rocks at the base of the falls before being released. He was taken to the hospital with only minor cuts and bruises. 1 year later, Karol Susek died while attempting to stunt at Houston Astrodome in front of 45,000 spectators during a freefall attempt into a 10-foot diameter water tank. On August 18, 1985, 22-year-old Stephen Trotter became the 9th person to go over the brink of the falls. The part-time bartender from Burlington, Rhode Island, seeking fortune and fame, began his journey just upstream from Horseshoe Falls. He was the youngest of daredevils to make the attempt. Trotter emerged from the stunt uninjured. Afterwards, he appeared on a few national television talk shows before fading out from public view. He would return to Niagara Falls 10 years later with his girlfriend Lori Martin, aged 29 years, of Atlanta, Georgia. At 9:30 a.m. on June 18, 1995, Martin and Trotter launched around 100 yards from the brink of the Horseshoe Falls along the Canadian side. They would be the second duo to make the attempt. The barrel went over the brink but got caught in the rocks below. They would be rescued and taken to the hospital with only minor bruises. On October 5, 1985, John David Munday became the 10th person to challenge the falls. He was a Canadian-born stunter who successfully rode the Whirlpool Rapids in 1989. An accomplished helicopter and fixed-wing pilot, Munday had 1,400 jumps as a skydiving instructor to his credit. For 20 years, he dreamed of going over the Horseshoe Falls. He was launched 150 yards from the Canadian side, and seconds later, he went over the brink. Munday was rescued by riverman Ken Sloggett after being trapped at the base of the falls in an eddy for 90 minutes. He received only minor injuries. He would return again to the falls on September 26, 1993. This time he went over in a 600-pound converted diving bell. Upon impact, he was knocked unconscious but recovered minutes later by the Little Maid of the Mist and brought to the Canadian shore. He emerged as the first person to go over Niagara Falls twice and lived to tell about it. September 28, 1989. Peter DiBarnardi and Jeffrey Petkovich became the 11th and 12th persons to challenge the falls, the first duo to make the attempt. DiBarnardi, a 42-year-old ex-stock car driver, wanted to be the first one to make a tandem stunt over the falls, but his partner backed away at the last minute. He then contacted John Munday, but he also refused. Finally, Jeffrey Petkovich, a 24-year-old student at the University of Ottawa, Ontario, agreed to the tandem stunt. The duo Daredevil team began their journey 200 feet from the brink of the falls. 25 seconds later, they went over the brink. DiBarnardi and Petkovich were rescued by the Maid of the Mist and brought back on the dock to the Canadian side, where they emerged uninjured. Petkovich had been drinking and was wearing only a necktie and cowboy boots as he emerged from the craft. On August 14, 1990, an attempt to go over the American Falls was diverted when a patrolman pulled over a truck containing DiBarnardi inside a styrofoam craft. On July 5, 1990, Jesse W. Sharp, became the 14th daredevil to challenge the falls. His stunt was unique in the fact that he was the first to go over the Horseshoe Falls in an open air, unprotected by an airtight enclosure. He planned to go over in a 36-pound polyethylene kayak, then continue on through the Great Gorge Rapids to the docks at Queenston, where he had made reservations at a restaurant. After 3 years, he had planned the stunt in hopes of furthering his career in stunting. So on June 5, 1990, Jesse Sharp paddled his way through the rapids and went over the Horseshoe Falls close to the middle. Minutes later, his kayak emerged. His body was never found. On October 1st, 1995, 39-year-old Californian Robert Overcrecker became the 15th daredevil to challenge Niagara Falls. Intrigued by Jesse Sharp's open-air attempt, he planned to accomplish the stunt by going over in a jet ski, then parachute to the safety below. The plan was to ignite a rocket that would propel the parachute open, but as he went over the brink, the rocket pushed the parachute off his body, as it was not tethered to his body properly before the stunt, sending him to his death below. He became the 5th person to die attempting to conquer the falls. On October 20th, 2003, Kirk Raymond Jones made history by becoming the first daredevil to go over the Horseshoe Falls with nothing more than a shirt on his back. Accompanied by a friend, the 40-year-old unemployed man from Canton, Michigan, spent several nights at a local motel preparing for the stunt. He brought along a used video camera to record the event as a means of making money if he survived his plunge. So approximately 20 feet from the brink of the Horseshoe Falls at Table Rock, Kirk Jones jumped in and seconds later fell 170 feet to the water below. He swam to shore and rescued later with only a few bruised ribs. Was Jones' feat an end of an era in stunting over Niagara Falls? Only time will tell. Kirk Jones was the 16th daredevil to challenge Niagara Falls. But is he the last? It's true that his feat was the greatest challenge in light of the fact he went over with no protection of any kind. In the past century, only 16 individuals had the courage and daring to face death in the eye and challenge the falls. To some they are heroes, to others they are desperate people on their last leg. Each had their own reasons and each had their own degree of heroism. Some stunts had more elements of risk than others. Of the 16 daredevils, only 5 died. None of the 11 survivors achieved any fortune as a result of their stunts. Some remained famous longer than others, but no one can argue the fact that they earned the title of daredevil and will forever be famous for their courage and daring, and their story remembered forever in time.